What's up guys, Philip at Trade Genius. All right, in this video, we are going to check out the big macro view. I'm gonna take a look at that and also some readings on that and where this is currently headed. We're gonna take a look at the weekly chart, daily charts, and see what's ahead for the week. We're gonna take a look at our futures chart, look at the gaps, and we're also gonna take a look at the crypto fear and greed indicator. Let's dive into this video and check that all out.
Trade Genius.
All right, guys, first up is this is the monthly chart on the BLX Brave New Coin Liquid Index for Bitcoin, simply just because it gives us our longest look back on TradingView charts. What we did was basically take typical price action when we're about 13 months out from the halving, which is where we're at. And actually has been tracking pretty well. If you look at the chart, and actually let's bump this up to a monthly. But if you look at the chart, you'll see that tracking pretty well with that. And I think this is going to bode fairly well as far as what the price action would probably do. This would represent a push up into the 6,000 area of resistance and then a pullback and then another surge higher. As we get into the halving, it would be another pullback. And that's not unusual. Around the halvings, these vertical lines represent the halvings. The price action isn't real exciting. You might have a little bit of a pullback or kind of sideways chop. They can be somewhat uneventful, but that's where you have to kind of zoom out and look at where the big picture is. Big picture, if you look at this thing from the cycles, you will see, now this is a monthly chart, but these are the areas now, right, where this line here, this red line, represents kind of the core of the move. These smaller stochastic lines are kind of like, think of them like rubber bands around that core move. So when they stretch, they can snap back. But basically, what we are seeing here is kind of like typical where these cycles bottom out and then go back up. So pretty bullish area. Again, this monthly hammer was the low, current low right now, 31.48 is the low. And my biggest reason for that being the likely low is just because no one was expecting that to be the low there at that point. This was going to be basically another area of consolidation and then rolling over. But being that where we are within the cycle between the halving events, there's nothing that shows us technically that we shouldn't not start climbing higher now ahead of those. That's just been a very strong factor, right, in the price action. So big picture of, and we can go to the weekly too. You'll notice on the weekly on this, where we come down, right, cyclically, and then we're coming up, and then when we are staying on the upper half of the range, that's typically our bull markets, right? So now we're coming out of this bear market, and we're poking back up, like we poked back up here, right? This is the 2015 time period, moved back up, and you can also see it back here before the first halving, poking back up. These are all very, very favorable areas to be getting back into a long-term position on Bitcoin. All right, so that's the macro big view. Now let's take a look at the daily and weekly. Actually, let's take a look at the gap chart. So this is the futures, right? And so over the weekend when they open up, or Bitcoin moves around a lot from the Friday close on the futures market to the Sunday evening open. If there's a big move, there's a gap. So this was filled and actually had a pretty decent looking candle on the hourly on the futures that was bought back up. So this area is being defended. They're buying the dips in here. And really it comes down to when is this cycle over, right? So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. There's also another smaller gap here. The problem with these smaller gaps though is sometimes they don't show up like on, say, a 4-hour chart. And see, that doesn't really have a gap there. This does. So these I don't hold too much or as much weight in as we do when we have these gaps that show up on the higher time frames. That's a possibility, but not a strong one as far as gap close goes. So back to the weekly chart. So what we did was, this is our current weekly bar. So last week, this was the bar that closed. We had a doji, or spinning top doji type candle. And that's a candle of indecision. And sometimes people see a big bar, they see the doji, they think, oh, pullback. But a lot of times that can be is just a pause in the action for a continuation move. Like you see, like here, you have a down move, kind of indecision, and then a little bit more down move to continue that. If we look back at the macro chart, if this plays out, this cycle plays out, we could probably run into this area of resistance at this 6,000 to 6,400 area, then we see that pullback. That's pretty logical, but you also have to look at the other scenarios that might happen. One other scenario that might happen is that we eke out a new high, but we don't actually get into this 6,000 area and the market tends to pull back from that point. That's one scenario. Another scenario is we deeply test this 6,000 area. Point of control up here is 6,400. That's where the most volume occurred during this consolidation period. So 6,400, if we get a weekly close above 5,800, I think that bodes pretty well for probing the 6,400 area. So that's what I'm looking at on the weekly. All these other weekly highs got blown out. We don't have to look at these anymore. Now what we're looking at is what we'll have here is the weekly high of 54.88, looking for that area to break out. Now, one question I had was, why are we kind of meandering here at 5,200 or so, 5,100, this whole 5,000 to 5,200 area? There's nothing, if you look at the chart, there's really nothing here, right? And we have this big volume void here. So what's going on in this area? Well, you need to go back to further back in time. And so what we can do is we can come back here. Actually, if you look on a 3-day chart, the 3-day chart had a little bit of a fight here before price moved up, and then it came back and tested. So this is getting through this zone here of approximately 50, this 5,500 up to 6,000. That's gonna be a next area where I think you're gonna see a surge higher into that, and then a fight there. But back to this area that we're looking at, and this is why it's good to take a look at these areas here. If we look, okay, so this is a 3-day chart or a 1-week chart. If we go back to the 3-day chart, for example, all right, so this is looking at these previous areas because we don't have anything currently in this area, right? There was just a quick move down. Why is this consolidating here? So take a look at this. If you look at this run up here, we came up and we hit this area here of resistance, turn into resistance. Market just put a top in there and pulled back, right? And then we came back through that, and this came back down and back tested this area. So what I like to do in those situations is mark off those areas, right? So we can just do this with the rectangle tool. So you can go do that and you can do that. Okay, so there's that. Now you just extend this out. And we can extend it way out. Okay, and then what does that give us? That gives us this area here where we came up and we broke through it and we came back and we back tested it. So that's right in that zone of previous resistance and then acting as support. And so that's why I think price has been messing around in this area. Okay. And the other area, again on the 3-day chart, is this big block here. Basically, this is where was the last attempt to try and push down, and then that was eaten up. So, and then you can see where price had probed down into this area and reacted off of it. So, I don't think on this first cyclical attempt that we see a break above 6K. I think we might overthrow it a little bit, but as far as marching right through it, I think there's just too much price history there for that. So, but we could see where it eats away. Basically, you get a pullback, but nothing like super dramatic, and then one final push. Okay, so first push here, looking for a second push, and then a third push I think would tire this move out. And then we start consolidating. I think that also coincides with Litecoin's pre-halving peak. And then we get kind of a pullback and a resting period. And then as we get a little closer to that halving event, we'll get another surge higher. And that would play out similar to what we have here. So thinking June, see a pullback and then bottom out, and then we start marching a bit higher as we get back into the August, September timeframe. So how do we look on like the daily and lower time frames? Well, if we take a look at our stats, I actually like how this is setting up on the Stoke lines. Basically, the trend, the core trend looking good, the core trend line. These are pulling back like we had here, and that provided us a decent move. Also coincided with one of our moneymaker buys. If you guys are interested in those signals, head over to tradelikeagenius.com where you can get those But you know, I like how this is setting up, and so you know, if these cross back up, that's probably going to coincide with a nice move up into this first area of resistance that we looked at. Obviously, we came off of this is a very small area at 5,500. I think we hit that again. We're probably going to break it. And honestly, guys, 5,800 is what I'm looking at. We could possibly see that this week. And what that is a fib extension from the start of this big move up, our pullback, and then we're looking for an extended move out to 5,800. And that gets us right into that 3-day block of resistance, right in the middle almost. So I think that's a pretty realistic target for the short-term move up. And if we look at the crypto fear and greed, let's take a look at that. What we will see is, again, we had come up here, we said, hey, watch out for that pullback, and that's what we saw here. That was this bar here pulling back. If we look at the, but if we look at that now, I think what you'll see, because we're in an uptrend, and keep in mind, this fear and gauge has mostly been active during the bear market. So I think what you'll see is some of the baseline measurements are going to be a little bit different on the upswing. So it's nice to see that actually during a sustained move up. But we said watch for the pullback here. We got that. So right now the fear and greed isn't really in a spot where historically we have much of an extreme reading. So this isn't really playing a factor here right now. I think next time it is a factor, we'll probably be up back in the upside again, where we would see another break from an up cycle. So 5,800 is possible this week. We'll see how that plays out, but I do think that that's a realistic upside target. To me, it's just a matter of, will that be the end of this up move, or get one more pause and then another cycle up? And basically that is the end of this cycle, and then we start cycling back down on the daily. So as you can see, our main core line gets oversold. These dips tend to pop up. Okay, same here, pop up. We're overbought, getting overbought here. So not that this is going to roll over right this second. What I'm saying is this will can meander up here, but just know that now this cycle is kind of getting toward the end of its cycle, and I think that would play out pretty perfect on this whole move up here, and then a rollover, correction, pull back, rest up, and then the next leg of this bull move up. All right, guys, well, that's the take on this week's video on Bitcoin. Please hit like and subscribe. We appreciate all the views. And if you have any questions, leave them below. If there's anything you'd like us to take a look at, also leave that below, and we can do some technical analysis on that stuff. All right, guys, again, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Take care.
Trade Genius.